Good morning. My name is Pandan Chatterjee, and today I, along with my cohorts, will present a study which is coined as Task Attributes and Process Integration in Business Process Offshoring, a perspective of service providers from India and China. The purpose of the study is to focus directly on the core of organizing and managing global BPO integration between global clients and their offshore providers. As BPO continues to overtake technology services and it will become the largest offshoring opportunity in the future, it is necessary to address the issues of designing and managing such business units. Another purpose of this study is to bridge the gap between end customers and offshore service providers, which usually arises from the lack of empirical and theoretical information that goes into management and governing of such global BPOs. Furthermore, this study contributes to international business, that is our course, in several ways. Although global integration of overseas operations have been studied extensively in the past, the previous inquiries focus mainly on internalization perspective, which means that a multinational enterprise uses its internal structure and intra-corporate systems to integrate geographically dispersed activities in order to minimize transaction costs and reduce exposures to external uncertainties arising from such market imperfection. So basically, they're trying to save money. At the same time, they're trying to save face rather than actually giving such activities to third party people or third party service providers, because if they make a mistake, there is no agency control. That's their reasoning, but we will further look into the fact that it is not so. Though a lot of you may know what a BPO really is, please do bear with me while I try to explain this phenomenon. It is the process of outsourcing business tasks, processes, or functions supporting domestic and global operations from foreign countries. BPO transfers the operational ownership of one or more of the global client's business processes to an overseas service provider, who are usually third party vendors, captive units, or joint ventures. These guys in turn perform the business process according to a set of predefined metrics. Now let's talk about the benefits of working alongside with the BPO. Benefits range from providing greater expertise from offshore process to cost reduction through cheap labor and infrastructure. And in our last class, we had discussed how iPhones were designed in California, but they were actually assembled in China due to cheap labor and lower cost of materials. We can also talk about the CSR activities, which is the customer service relation activities of various companies, which are taken care by multiple third-party vendors in India. This really does help reduce the costs considerably. For a BPO to work properly, it must be done on time and seamlessly integrated. Both global clients and service providers must be committed to joint risk, process coordination, joint monitoring of quality, among others. The identity or type of service provider, as well as the geographic diversity of the global client and customers served by BPO, moderate the link between task traits and process integrations. This requires a healthy balance between flexibility and control, thus demanding the optimization of process integration. Carrying on, BPO integration is defined as the extent to which the offshore provider and its global clients build an efficient and unifying system under which they must mutually support, coordinate, and collaborate for designated business processes and related activities. This occurs because BPO integration is a task specific phenomenon, and offshore service providers hold the key to the effectiveness of integrating externalized activities. So basically, better integration leads to better performance. Lastly, for this slide at least, I would like to define task attributes. It is a descriptive characteristic that defines important information about a relating task or activity. This means that it determines behavior of the task and communicates task data to assigned employees. For example, priority, duration, status, time left, costs, goals, are some of the attributes of a task. A task without any attribute is considered to be useless, as the task at hand is not properly defined. In global BPO's context, BPO integration is shaped by these task attributes, and alignment between the nature of the task and integration is highly variable as it depends on the dynamics of end customers and offshore providers. This means that the type of offshore provider and end customer diversity add more complications for the relationship between task attributes and integration because they serve as important conditions or contingencies under which the set task traits affect integration. Now let's talk about the importance of integration. Why are we actually doing this study? And what are the problems faced if a BPO is not structured properly? The first thing is that there's an increase in substantial risk. This means that if a BPO integration is absent or weak, there will be substantial risk in process control, data security, and switching costs, while increasing the uncertainty of daily operations for the entire global system. A survey of BPO clients in 2006 showed that 40% of them cited loss of control of offshore process as their major concern. This means that the offshore or the end clients were not really happy with the freedom provided to the third party providers because they were technically skirting around the predefined metrics or rules set by the parent company in order to get their job done. But without effective integration, risk in data leakage is considerably high and it cannot be unaddressed as global clients view network security, physical security, customer privacy, and information protection to be increasingly critical as more employees abroad can gain access to their identification information, PIN codes, and other confidential data. Last thing I need is somebody who calls me up and would swindle me out of all my money because they know about everything that I have. Uh, Second is the effective integration usually results in effective process delivery. What this means is the effectiveness of integrating process and functions that are interdependently and interactively conducted by both internal units and external vendors is a critical capability that affects business success. If we simply focus on output control in a BPO, then problems arise due to the fact that we do not know which action will lead to which type of result. And given the inherent ambiguity of business process description, there is difficulty of documenting and measuring such process. Another importance is that integration requires joint efforts from both global clients and offshore providers. Members must first evaluate to what extent and in what way specific business functions or processes need to be coordinated or jointly controlled. Then, to measure their efforts, goal assessment is important because sustained integration is made possible only if all parties involved in the process share compatible objectives, especially when the strategic goals converge and their competitive goals diverge. For instance, appraisals allow all parties involved within an organization to properly assess each party's capabilities, contributions, and commitments. To make integration work, many firms today use integration teams who plan, appraise, coordinate, and monitor entire integration process. Now, the fourth point would be that task characteristics and task interdependence determine the level of complexity and uncertainty in performing a specific task. Well, what this means is that the integration process must properly be designed and it should follow specific parameters. This is done because BPO integration primarily concerns itself with the coordination of internal processes within the BPO network. Aligning them with task requirements is central to optimal integration in BPO activities. The information processing theory claims that firms are open systems that interface with various sources of complexity and that they must develop an information processing mechanism, such as integration, which is capable of dealing with complexity and uncertainty. Therefore, I would say that guided by this logic, we argue that BPO's task characteristics and task interdependence determine information processing requirements, which are more complex and such that more complex and uncertain tasks face a greater information processing requirement. Meanwhile, Higher level interdependent tasks require more information processing within the firm and with other participating entities. I do apologize for overtly explaining everything, but all the aforementioned points would help us better understand the numbers in the slide when we get there. Uh, I'm trying to make things interesting by providing pictures, but here we go again. The hypotheses have been derived from the defining attributes, which is vital for process integration. The first hypothesis that we'll talk about is task complexity, which describes the extent to which the BPO task is sophisticated and difficult to be standardized, thus requiring a great deal of expertise and specialized knowledge and brain power from multiple fields to undertake the said task. For a BPO service provider, task complexity escalates the need for coordination and integration, both within the firm and with its global clients. Integration mechanisms provide a higher information processing capacity. In this situation, increased BPO integration can steer business process development and execution for complex tasks in a way that is consistent with the client's needs for various deliverables, such as time, speed, quality, feedback, and responsiveness. Task security concerns the degree to which process-related and customer-related information of the task needs to be protected and safeguarded. In the in the absence of an effective PPO integration, there is a constant risk of data leakage and complications for global clients if the offshore provider fails to secure the data. Additionally, intellectual property issues abound for PPO operations, which may have an impact on the process design and integration. As mentioned earlier, following the information processing theory, requirements for processing task-related information are greater if a firm faces increased task uncertainty or when the firm encounters a greater pressure to mitigate such uncertainty. Now we'll talk about task connectivity. It is defined as the extent to which a BPS task process and functions are inseparable from one another. If a process or a function fails, the other process or functions fail as well. Therefore, ultimately, the entire BPA project will fail. That is, all the processes are mutually that is to say that all the tasks and processes in this particular business unit are mutually dependent to one another. As task becomes more connected across functions and processes, it is essential to build a software structure that permits data and information to flow more seamlessly and frequently, along with constructing a hardware infrastructure that permits linkages among different systems and intervention with units in different countries. Better connectivity, basically. Increased task connectivity propels the need to coordinate different functions and integrate the various roles and responsibilities of its members on both sides of the party. Then we'll talk about task stickiness. It defines the extent to which a particular BPO task is novel, evasive, tacit, or difficult to describe, such as that of a sticky task accentuates the interdependence between the global client and its offshore providers. In BPO's context, stickiness may be involved during task partition and transfer processes, as well as during the task execution and service delivery process. It causes transfer between two firms to be slow, costly, and uncertain. Highly sticky BPO tasks can be successfully executed only when all participating parties or individuals in cross-border locations are committed to interdependent sharing and mutual support. Sticky tasks entail enduring mutual awareness, coordination, and cooperation, and are often tightly scripted, structured, and governed. In this one particular picture, we see that Skeletor is saying that better integration leads to positive economic growth. Hey, if Skeletor is saying it, it must be true, I would say. I ran out of meme ideas. I'm really sorry about that. So here is a picture of a guy, a generic cartoon figure who apparently seems to be really happy at his job. I don't know why though. But let's continue talking about the attributes. Task dependence. It describes the degree to which a global client depends on its offshore providers for delivering the BPS services. The information processing logic suggests that as dependence increases, coordination problem solving demands increases as well. Leading vendors will benefit more from the process integration and productivity enhancement and process streamlining and at the same time they will also learn how to tackle various tasks, and what tools they can use to actually solve various problems. End customer geolocation. This refers to the extent to which end customers served by the global client via BPO are geographically spread across worldwide. The greater the geographical coverage and diversity of the global clients and customers, the greater the heterogeneity of the end customer's expectations. For instance, if a task is complex, as the BPO client's end customer's distance increases, the need for mutual communication and coordination to process complex tasks is even higher. Security risk increases as well. We shall look at the survey later to better understand this particular attribute's hypothesis. Type of offshore providers. Internalized mode, that is captive or joint venture, who is often preferred for high-end or sensitive tasks like legal services, whereas independent or third-party vendors are favored in light of advantage of greater flexibility and the scale and range of expertise available, tasks such as CSR. While captive units are restricted in terms of cost cutting because they cannot spread fixed infrastructure costs across a wide range of customers, independent units allocate resources and costs to different customers as they see fit. In this level of freedom, we see that they tackle effectively and they tackle the effects of task connectivity, task stickiness, and task dependence with ease. Now, I will hand over the presentation to Alana, who would guide you through the numbers and figures, which I swear is a bit more boring than what I just went through. And it would also, but do be attentive because it would help us prove the hypothesis.
I will now be explaining the hypothesis mentioned on this slide. The first five hypotheses deal with complexity, security, connectivity, stickiness, and dependence, which have a common framework. These are assessed on the basis of their intensity with regards to process integration between offshore service providers and their global clients. They are stated to increase as integration increases. Hypothesis 6a states that the effect of task complexity on process integration will be stronger as the global client's end customer's geo-breadth increases, while 6b states that the effect of task security on process integration will be weaker as the global client's and end customer's geo-breadth increases. As such, complexity shares a positive relationship while security shares a negative one with process integration. Hypothesis 7a, b, and c discuss connectivity, stickiness, and dependence, and that process integration will be stronger for BPO services provided by independent vendors than by internalized vendors. Lastly, Hypothesis 8 states that the positive effect of business integration on economic returns achieved by offshore providers will diminish as business integration continues to increase. It is an inverse hypothesis. Next, we have research methods. Data was collected using cross-border BPO information in India and China to test the hypothesis. According to NASSCOM and McKinsey and Company, Indian BPO service providers have forged business relationships with 75% of Fortune 500 companies. The country has 2.5 million people working in the BPO industry, accounting for nearly 95% of the growth in foreign exchange influence in services industries in recent years. China's BPO industry recorded revenues of $12.3 billion. International Data Corporation correctly projected that China will join India in dominating the global BPO market by 2011. Owing to massive investments in new BPO destinations involving major cities such as Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen. The questionnaire was developed by surveying existing literature, field observations, and interviews with BPO executives in both China and India. The survey in China was conducted with senior executives of BPO companies as the primary respondents. These companies were provided by city-level government agencies. Data collection in India was done in collaboration with a leading BPO consulting and research firm based in Bangalore. The majority of global clients for these firms originated from the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Canada. Now onto the complex bit of hypothesis testing results. Statistics isn't everyone's forte, it definitely isn't mine, and I'm sure the woman in the meme was attempting some form of stats by the look on her face. These numbers look confusing, but after a few tears and an almost broken phone, I realized the ones I've highlighted in green are the most important. The level of significance for the test carried out was at an average 0.05 with 95% confidence. This just means that if the hypothesis get proved, we can be 95% confident of the results. Generally, as a rule of thumb, the numbers highlighted should be higher than the significance. As such, most of the hypotheses have been proved. The five main task attributes of complexity, security, connectivity, stickiness, and dependence increase as integration increases. This just means that as task complexity increases, it gets more intensive and it might be more difficult for employees carrying them out to understand. Task security may also be compromised as it is tough to control the flow of information as tasks increase. Connectivity and stickiness increases as well, and moreover, dependence on the global client increases. Moving on to 6A and B, as geographic dispersal of consumers and clients are more, integration complexity gets stronger and security gets weaker due to difficulty in setting control measures. With regards to hypothesis 7, independent and internalized vendors, connectivity and dependence are stronger with independent BPO companies, which means that if services were outsourced to internal parties, these attributes would be weaker. Stickiness is the only attribute which didn't get approved. It remains the same regardless of the type of vendor. Lastly, the final hypothesis is proved that the positive effect of business integration on economic returns achieved by offshore providers will diminish as business integration continues to increase. This is inverse because integration gets complex along the way, and this may affect economic returns if not handled strategically. Moving on, we have managerial implications. This was the reason it was important to break down the hypotheses and prove them to be accurate. The information gained from test results can now be converted to information necessary for managers in achieving success. Global BPO executives, especially those from the provider's end, should realize the importance of appropriate alignment between task dynamics and process integration. Well-designed process integration is a stepping stone to financial gains, customer satisfaction, organizational reputation, and knowledge accumulation. But overly high integration beyond the information processing needs will obstruct such economic gains. An integrated and collaborative relationship between a global client and its offshore provider is the key to global BPO success. It allows global clients to specialize in their domain of core competencies while relying on overseas providers for specialized expertise and skills. The client and provider must work together to ensure high quality of service, which in turn generates considerable benefits by unifying processes. Independent vendors attach greater process integration in order to align with the same task dynamics than do internalized vendors. This may explain why external vendors are more popular than internalized mode of service delivery in global BPO conducted in countries such as India. Last but not the least, in response to competitive pressures, firms are now seeking to complement and strengthen their internal capabilities by building digitally enabled extended enterprises that tap into specialized skills of firms across the globe.
To the conclusion part in our presentation. The hypothesis has a positive correlation with the results, and we are confident with our proposition and observations. The analysis of offshore companies in India and China support our observations. As you saw, we have five main task attributes such as complexity, security, connectivity, stickiness, and dependence. It gets difficult as tasks increase. The management decisions should be in accordance with the current level of integration and tasks, considering the major concerns like loss of control and data leak. There are high chances of a data leak in a big company, and the resulting risks would be devastating for the said company. As the business integration continue to increase, we will observe a diminishing trend in the economic returns achieved by the offshore provider with respect to the positive effect of the business integration. We conclude that the managers should closely monitor the triads in the offshore unit activities. Managers should also take appropriate decisions with respect to the complexity, the security, and the connectivity. Government has a substantial influence over the trade decisions of companies around the world. To give an example, we observed a trade war between the US and China in 2020. As many US companies manufacture their products in China, they faced a rather different problem which they had to comply with. We talked earlier in the presentation that Apple assembles its product in China and thus was in a bit of a dilemma during this period. In 2020, they had a manufacturing plant in India for one of their products. This is an example of how government regulations will have implications on the companies. Tax subsidies and reduced compliance will encourage the companies to have an offshore production unit, whereas restrictions on increased taxation will demotivate the company to have the production unit in that respective country. So, it is important for countries like India and China to encourage the companies from other parts of the world to have their offshore units by offering tax benefits and subsidies, as it plays an important role. With increasing global competition, the companies should carefully study the triads and integration of offshoring processing activities. It is important for companies to closely monitor the offshore activities. The management should avoid any potential risks such as security breaches. They must take into consideration every potential risk which might harm their reputation. To avoid all the risks, companies should be better integrated with respect to the current triads. Better integration will result in better performance, which will lead to increase in profits. As the goal of all the companies is to make profits, the management should balance flexibility and control over the activities to maximize the profits with keeping the risks under control. Outsourcing is one of the best business decisions for many companies around the world. Outsourcing is an effective business strategy which will help Canadian companies to grow and increase their profits. India and China offer cheap and skilled workforce. With the relaxation of regulations, Canadian companies can increase their productivity and save on costs. Advanced infrastructure will help Canadian companies to control their quality and focus on the profitability, research and development, which will result in innovative products. This is especially important for small companies in Canada, which can take advantage as there are many individual companies in India and China who offer their services at a cheaper price with decreased minimum limit. This ensures small Canadian companies to outsource services like production of goods, customer care, and backend for a much cheaper price, with ensuring quality and timely delivery of those respective goods. We think small Canadian companies should really take advantage of outsourcing, as there is no minimum limit until you negotiate with the appropriate partner in those countries. Outsourcing certain activities can help small business grow and concentrate on the main things such as innovation and developing their new products. For a company to survive in the market, they need to be efficient. Outsourcing helps these companies to become efficient and competitive. Because India and China are attracting companies to invite them to outsource, Canadian companies should take advantage for getting the best deal before they outsource. Big companies can get good deals in the terms and conditions. India and China offer some big companies relaxation in rules and regulation to make them invest and outsource. Manufacturing of goods and customer service are most commonly outsourced. They have the advantage of cheap labor with good infrastructure, which will not harm the quality of the product. Also, companies can have 24-hour customer care with cheap and efficient labor, which results in satisfied customers, loyal customers, and increased profits. Although we think data centers should not be outsourced because the increase in the risk and lack of control and data theft can be crucial.